Welcome to the Rock Interview Series with host Thomas S. ORWAT Jr.
Welcome to episode number 123 of the Rock Interview Series. I'm Thomas ORWAT Jr. Today is May 29th, 2025, and for this episode, I have Matt Bissonette, the current bass player of the Kevin Cronin band, formerly known as Reo Speedwagon. During this interview, Matt talks about his side project called the Squirts, which are a power pop trio that, in addition to Matt, who handles lead vocals and bass, consists of rock music all-stars George Bernhardt on guitar and Rodger Carter on drums. The Squirts just released their third full-length release entitled 3. In addition, Matt also discusses performing as the bass player in the backing bands of Elton John, Rick Springfield, Ringo Starr, DLRoth, and Reo Speedwagon. So let's get started. Here is Matt Bissonette. Hey everyone, welcome to the Rock Interview Series, and we have the legendary bassist songwriter with us, Matt Bissonette, currently on tour with the Kevin Cronin band.
Yes.
We'll talk about that, but I want to concentrate on this new project that you have. It's the third record from a band called the Squirts, kind of like a power pop, kind of no frills, just high energy, good old-fashioned rock and roll. So that record just came out. It's your third record. It's been like 20 years in between the second and the third record. What took so long?
We're very, very slow writers. But hey, thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate you having me, and I'm here for the other guys. The other guys are back in LA, and yeah, we're out on the road. We're in Daytona Beach right now. I'm looking at the beach here. It's pretty nice and really, really hot. So I'm glad to be inside talking to you. But yeah, the Squirts was originally a band that we were all on the road playing with Rick Springfield. I was the bass player and singing, and George Bernhardt was the guitar player, and Rodger Carter, the drummer, we were all playing in Rick's band, and we recorded two records with Rick, and so we got to be really good friends with Rick, and he's a great guy. And we had this side project that we were just writing songs at my studio at my house, because we all had studios and we were living in LA. And we just started with one song, and it kind of became another one. We go, we should just put out a CD or something just for fun. And then it came out to be a pretty good first record. And then we asked Rick if we could open up for him. So Rick, being the gracious guy that he is, he said, yeah, go ahead. And it was kind of like a glorified sound check for the band anyway, because we'd go up on the same gear and play and kind of ring out the PA. And then when Rick came up, it sounded even better. But he was cool enough to let us open up for him for a few years. So we did our first record, and then that came out, and the Rick fans were great because they supported us and bought our CDs and T-shirts and all that stuff, and it was really a cool experience. And then we did a second album called Re-Squirted, and then this album that just came out. So basically, it's been 20 years because we've all kind of gone our way. George moved to Nashville. We all had kids and stuff. And in fact, the second CD we had a song called The Way That I See You, and we did a video at Rodger's studio. And my son, we did it like there was a young band, which was a version of us, which was my son was one of the kids playing bass. And then my dad was the older, three guys were the older version in the video. So it was us, the young guys and old guys. And it was kind of like a view about life and getting older and how life goes by. And my dad's no longer with us. My son's 28 years old now, and life just goes on. So it's hard to believe it's been 20 years since that record. But we just decided we were just kind of, we've always been really good friends through the years, and we all still work together and stuff. But we decided one day just to do it. Started with one song, and during COVID, and then it kind of became kind of a hyper-focused kind of list, kind of try and get something good out of this COVID situation. So we recorded it then, and now the new album's being released, and we hope everybody likes it.
Yeah. Now, with you having such a busy summer schedule, do you have any plans like down the road this year to get the band out on the road?
We really want to. We've been talking about it, and it's a trio. So and there's a lot of overdubs and stuff like that happens. So sometimes we have to figure out ways that we can figure this out with all the harmonies and multiple guitars and stuff. But we've done it before, and it's just kind of a project where you finally decide we're going to do this, and then you just go full bore into it and figure out the details. But we really want to because we're really proud of these new songs, and we'd love to get out and play in front of people.
Yeah, and with this new batch, there's 10 songs on the record right now. Were these songs like, older some of them older songs that you written like, 10, 15, 20 years ago, or were they all pretty much newly written songs?
Um, One of the songs, When You Die, we were on the road with Rick in Milwaukee playing at Potawatomi Casino for a week. So we would just set up our studios in our rooms, and we went to a friend of George's who used to live in Milwaukee, and we recorded in his basement just like 10 instrumental songs because we were doing music placement for companies. We'd write instrumental tracks and they'd put them on TV and stuff like that. And we used to make pretty good living before the whole music business kind of subsided on that part. But George was listening to all that stuff like a couple years ago, and he found that track, and we used that premise for that song for the song When You Die, and then we just changed it and modified it and stuff like that. But that's probably the oldest song that we have that we start. Everything else we started from scratch except for the song in Paradise. That song we recorded probably about 10 years ago for just kind of for fun, and then we redid that as well. But yeah, most of them were all done from scratch except for those two songs.
Yeah. One song that really stood out to me, and I'm sure you're getting a lot of feedback on this one, is the song White Noise. Kind of has a heavy metal vibe to it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a great song. How did that one come about? I mean, it's kind of like went out of your like kind of like your element a little bit as far as the style of the Squirts.
Yeah, well, we kind of figured out since music's changed, even since when the Squirts were around, it was kind of like you had to put out a record where every song sounded like the band and everything was in its genre for the record companies, and now you don't really have to do that because people are buying singles and they care about one song or whatever. So we kind of just said, we love all styles of music. We're like jazz, the rock, fusion, and Queen and Zeppelin and Gilbert O'Sullivan, anything. We just love different styles of music. So we just made a conscious effort to just go, we're just going to make what we like and no parameters and, just whatever comes out. So I think I started that idea for that song because I wanted to do something heavy, just to have at least one kind of real heavy song. And then George just took it to another level with the guitars. And usually what we would do is I would come up with a basic idea, or George would come up with a riff or something, send it to me, and I'd kind of come up with some words or something. And when we got the song together, we'd kind of send it to Rodger. Rodger would do his thing and add stuff. And then we just would build it like Lincoln Logs. It would just be this thing that was going. But White Noise was kind of there's a lot of songs on this album that are kind of dealing with the anger that everybody had going through COVID and how messages were being sent about you have to take this drug, you have to do this, you can't, this is essential, this is not essential, and how everybody kind of went through their own personal hardships during COVID. So this one, White Noise, is definitely about just, it starts out with the sound of a radio going, and when everybody, like online, with what's happening now with everybody feeling like their opinion has to be heard, the internet has given everybody the opportunity to say whatever they want, and that's great, but it's also not so great because there's so much hatred that things that you can say to people online that you would never say to their face, or they would just punch you. It's just kind of a horrible thing that happens. So White Noise is kind of an angry song about us kind of laughing about the situation of going, everybody has an opinion, whether they love you or hate you, it really doesn't matter. I mean, I learned lessons years ago about going online and putting your name in to see what people say about you, and you can get 80, 90% people saying, yeah, I like him. And then there's that one guy that hates you and just lets everybody knows, never met this guy. For some reason, he just hates you. And that's the thing you hold on to is, oh man, if that guy liked me, and it taught me a lesson of none of that matters. And it is just white noise, just, politically, everyone's just, whether you're Republican or Democrat, everyone is dug in on their sides. and they don't listen anymore. And we were talking on the bus yesterday. I was talking to our road manager, who's thinks one way and I think the other way, and we just looked at each other and laughed and just said, "We're going to get along. We're going to talk about everything and have fun with this, and nothing is that important that we have to, forge in on our opinions. Just be open-minded and loving, and that's the thing that's gone." So that's pretty much what that song is, and it sounds really super angry, but inside every song, we're all just a bunch of older guys that are laughing inside about whatever we're thinking about. It always comes like the bridge of that song goes to sounds like it's two guys on a porch just sitting there talking, and while the world's exploding around you, you got to have peace because that's all that matters in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, another song that I really like, and I believe it was the first single from the record, Not a Good Time for a Clown. You guys put out a video for that. I love the title, great song. So tell us the story behind that song.
Well, thanks for your kind words. I appreciate it. That's another one. Um, I mean, I really love that band Ecstasy, and they have songs that I like to kind of top a similar thing to them, and the way that they write songs, and the way that they have clever words, and their harmonies, and the way they approach songs. And this song is definitely a tip of the hat to that band, but it's also kind of like what the Squirts have been doing for years. And just a light pop song that, it's kind of like people have been asking me since the video came out, like, what are you saying? What are you saying in this song? And as a writer, when I first started writing lyrics, I thought that I was like super wise and my lyrics were super deep, and I would tell them, oh, well, this is about this and that, and that kind of lets the cat out of the bag. So I'm kind of in the school of thought that John Lennon would say when they'd ask him, what is this song, Strawberry Fields, what's this about? He goes, well, what does it mean to you? We try and write our songs so that it can be interpreted in any way by anybody. But I mean, for me in my brain, and for us as a band when we wrote that, it was also during COVID, and how ridiculous it was that everybody was getting in so much trouble by saying something that didn't fit whatever the world was going through at that time. We saw how fast that the thought police would come in and say, that's racist, so you're a racist, or you say this, that means you're in this group, so you're bad, and how everybody just kind of flipped out and lost it. Now we look back, kind of like I was just watching the 9/11 manhunt for Osama bin Laden, and I haven't thought about 9/11 and how that felt in my gut when we saw the towers fall and everything happen. But as soon as I watched the first 5 minutes of that documentary, it just stuck me right back to the fear that everybody had. And I went, I can't believe we went through that as a nation and a world. And then when COVID hit, now we're out on the road. I remember when we were out with Elton, we had to do this COVID protocol every day. You got something jammed up your nose to check for COVID, and all these meetings and stuff. And somehow they pulled off that farewell Yellow Brick Road tour by a lot of hard work by management, and we made it through. Now we're out on the road with Kevin and Styx and Don Felder. You would have never thought that COVID ever existed because we're far away from it. But I mean, we kind of decided to kind of make a freeze frame of this time. And Not a Good Time for a Clown is definitely about how at that time you really have, I mean, even now you have to really watch what you say, because the sense of humor for everybody is kind of out the window. If you're super far left or super far right, you got those fighting words, and it's a rally cry to go at it. And I've made with all the musicians in my life that think completely different than I do, it's never worth not being friends and loving them and having a great relationship and being able to talk about anything. And I feel like the people in my life, I feel that it kind of works out sometimes, but there's certain things I wouldn't say to some people, and you just have to pick your moments and times. But Not a Good Time for a Clown, for me, every time I hear it, I just laugh, because Rodger Carter our drummer, put that video together himself. And I thought he kind of nailed it. It's like, in the end, we are all just clowns. It's not talking about this person is a clown or that person is a clown. since we're all clowns and we're all capable of doing bad things or good things, since that's in there, we got to laugh about it because nobody's perfect, and we got to get our sense of humor back quick.
Yeah. For fans that want to get this amazing CD, are you going to be selling it on the current Brotherhood rock tour?
No, no, no. I haven't. This is their thing. It's a Styx, Kevin Cronin, and Downfelder, and they sell their stuff, and we stay back from that stuff.
Okay, so how can fans get the CD?
Well, it's posted on the internet and on the interweb, on our Instagrams and stuff like that. And I know Dave at Vanity Records has a link to his site, and we're selling that CD with his through his website and online with his record company, and also at Bandcamp for the downloads. So I don't know if you received that
Mhm.
picture with the video and everything. It should have everything on it to get the CD.
Okay. How important is it for you to have this creative outlet? You're notorious for playing. I mean, you really have one of the most impressive resumes of any musician on the face of the earth. I mean, David Lee Roth, Springfield, Elton John, uh, Reo Speedwagon. I mean, it's impressive. I'm sure I forgot one. John Waite, maybe. Um, but you were, the bass player in the band. Now you have this creative outlet. Also, your other band, which is it blows my mind. The Redcoats are absolutely incredible.
Oh,
More of like
thank
a jazz fusion type of band. Insanely incredible. But
you.
how important is it for you to have those, creative outlets where you are, the main member of the band or like a big part of the band as far as the creative outlet goes?
Well, thanks for saying that. I appreciate it, and thanks for listening to it. It's probably the most essential thing for me is I mean it's just about purpose. So when I was 20 years old, I had my things that I wanted to do in life, and I just started writing then and stuff, and it was fun. But it's really kind of my purpose that I feel like when I go out on the road, I'm working for the person that's hiring me. And my brother and I, we first started with Maynard Ferguson back in 1981. And I've been on the road since 1981 playing with these bands. And I thank God every day that somebody would even call me to play in their band. Like when I got off the road with Elton, uh, I was pretty much thinking I'm going to be done. And then Dave Amato called me from REO because Bruce, the bass player, had a back injury. And he called me, "Can you go out on the road?" And I was like, "Okay, I'm back out on the road." And it's like a year and a half later. So it's something that my wife and I talk about, that how important it is to have something to look forward to. It's like our little puppy dog, 17 years old, just died last year or a couple months ago. And there's a void there. So what do you do to fill your voids of your life? Some people can get drunk or do drugs or whatever they're going to do. And you kind of, that's the way we are as humans. But for me, I feel like if I didn't write songs and if I didn't record stuff, I'd lose my mind. I tell everybody that I've got probably 10,000 CDs in my closet that nobody will ever hear and nobody will ever buy. They don't even know they're out there. And, but if I didn't do them, it would feel like unfinished business. And I really want to just finish anything that I start. Like I got a couple other records that I'm working on till next year, the end of the summer or fall. I just have to have something to do because when you stop, it's like I always see these older Japanese women and men in the parks and they're stretching and and they don't look like they're really doing anything, but they're actually exercising their bones, and they probably live to be 1,000 years old. And once you stop moving and once you stop thinking as a musician, I mean, you're done. I mean, I've seen so many of my friends that just, I'm going to retire because I'm done with touring. And then 2 years later, they're gone. Or I'm just going to play golf every day and retire. I mean, we don't retire as musicians because we're blessed. This is such a fun thing to do. Why would you want to retire? So I'm going to write songs until, I'm like the pastor in the pulpit that wants to die preaching. It's like, I don't care if anybody hears it. And Rick Springfield and I talk about this all the time. It's like a muscle, you just keep exercising that muscle. You could be 90 years old and you finally write the perfect song. And it's just something about that gratification of writing that's different than being a sideman. And the great thing with Kevin and his band is it's not really sidemen. It's like a band, and everybody does their thing. And all the bands that I've played with, the artists have been so cool to make me feel part of the band, even though it is a sideman role. So I'm just very thankful and still surprised that at 63 years old, people still want me to play in their band. I mean, it's
Yeah.
pretty great.
Well, nowadays with the bands out on the road, 63 is considered pretty young.
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird. When I got the Elton gig, my friend Bob was the bass player, a great friend of mine from Detroit, and he passed away. And about 2 weeks before, I was out with Rick, and we were on the road, and I've been with Rick forever, and I was just getting older and just getting kind of tired of traveling. I remember getting on my knees and praying, God, just give me something different that I can do, and maybe if it's a tour or something, that would be great. But just please don't let me be the oldest guy in the band. I don't want like Green Day to call me and I look like Moses up there. And like a couple days later, it's a horrible thing that Bob passed away. But Davey Johnson called me and goes, "Hey man, do you want to go on the road with Elton?" And I was like, okay, not only did that happen, that gig, but I'm the youngest guy in the band at like 55 or whatever. So I was kind of like, okay, be careful what you pray for, and be specific. And that's why I learned a lesson about specific prayer. you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I spoke earlier about all the artists that you've been in the band with. Out of all of those, what do you consider the most challenging? What was the one gig that, you thought was like, I'm not sure if I could do this, or were you pretty confident that you were able, you were able to do anything that you were put up to?
Well, each one of them is challenging in their own. Every one of them is completely different. I remember being a kid, 19 years old, and Maynard called me to go on the road, and I was like, I'd only been playing bass probably 6 years, and now I'm with the greatest jazz trumpet player on the road with a bunch of great musicians. And you just kind of pray a lot and hope that all that you've done to practice will be enough to get through it. And then as a bass player and as a musician, you kind of wiggle your way around. I mean, you're always kind of looking around going, what can I do to get better? I can always get better. And then I realized I was just placed in tons of situations where I felt inadequate about. And uh, that just kind of worked out. Maynard loved us and played, and it was a great 2 year experience. I remember when Roth, when I went out with Roth, I'm going, my biggest thing is having to take some other bass player that's a monster. So, and that seems to be what I've done. So when Billy Sheen left the band, I was kind of freaked out, like, oh man, people are gonna freak out. And some people did, and because people hate change or whatever, but Dave decided to make a move. And I was telling somebody the other day, the first gig with Dave, I was freaking out because I'm thinking, I'm going to get killed up here. And I remember the lights were going on the first song, and we start getting into the first song, and this nunchuck comes flying at me and hits me, a Chinese star, right at my head. And I moved, and it was like going like this, wiggling in my bass strap. And I'm going, oh man, I'm going to die up here. And I remember praying, please don't let this ever happen again. And it never happened again. But it's weird when you take big boy shoes like Billy or Stu Ham's place with Joe Satriani. That was another one. And there were some people that weren't happy about that. And I remember when I would get introduced, sometimes people would go, Stu, and it would sound like they're booing. And and you have to laugh about it because people have their favorites and stuff like that. But you just have to keep practicing and being ready for it. My brother and I, made it a goal years ago to try and learn every style of music, to be prepared for anything when it comes to be able to read. So if Disney calls, you go to a session, you don't make total mistakes and mess up the session for everybody. You just be ready for the job, and you just have to listen to a lot of music and practice a lot and try and be versatile in all the different things. And the best thing about writing and having a studio and learning how to engineer and learning how to sing in the studio, all those like like baseball 5 tool players, to be able to write, to sing, to do backgrounds. I mean, most of the gigs that I get is because I can sing backgrounds. And that's something that bass players, they go, it's not that important. I just want to play bass. And you go, well, if you want to work and if you want to support your family down the road, you got to work on these things. You got to have these things together. So there's been a lot of intimidating things in my life that I've walked into, but I'm thankful that, it wasn't too terrible. It all worked
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. What was it like playing in the Elton John band? I mean, you really can't get much bigger than that.
Yeah, again, it was intimidating because, I mean, it's Elton and everything. And I knew Bob for years, and he would tell me stories about you're right next to Elton when you're playing bass. He always has his bass player right to his left. And he looks at you all the time. Like if he plays something, you just got to give him energy all the time. Like, and playing music with him is like playing with a 16-year-old, guy that's just he just loves playing so much that he'll play something and look at you. And my hardest thing was that I didn't want to schmooze him and just go, "Oh yeah, you're great," because you're right there. I kind of wanted, he'd look at me and I'd kind of look the other way a little bit, and then and then he'd play something really cool, and I go, "Yeah, yeah," and we would just be looking at each other like, "Check this out," and I'd play something, and he would hear everything I would play because his mix was so loud. Like if you go in front of his monitors, you're going to go deaf, but he could hear everything, and when you played something, he was listening. So it really taught me a lesson that just love music. If I could love music like that guy, you know, and here he is in pain, walking up with his hips and stuff, and he's out there playing. And that was pretty intimidating to start that, because Dee Murray is an amazing bass player and playing his bass parts and filling Bob's place was just kind of uncomfortable because Bob passed away and it was traumatic for everybody. But I remember, like on the third gig, Elton called me when we're leaving a gig and called Davy Johnson. Davy gave me the phone. He goes, "I just want you to know you're doing a great job, and I want you to just express yourself and just play the way you want to." And I did. And he only said two things over 13 years about on Rocket Man. He asked me just to play a little simpler one time, and on Take Me to the Pilot, maybe just back it off a little bit on this song. So for 13 years to have the leader only say two things, it's pretty amazing. So he made it real comfortable for me, and the band was always great. It was
Yeah.
great people.
Yeah. Was he real involved in the band? I mean, as far as like, doing sound checks and
Yeah.
rehearsals and that? No.
Well, we have a guy named Adam Chester who's our surrogate Elton, and he's a great piano player, singer. He knows every song in the world for every band, and Davy Johnson is the musical director. And when we're going to start a tour, we'll usually go for like 3 days. Adam will come out, and Davy will run the songs, and Adam plays them really well, so it's kind of a dry run. And Elton pretty much just shows up the day of show, does a few songs. He hates rehearsing. He hates sound checks. So he'll play a few things and just bolt. So we never do sound checks with Elton. We never, same thing with Kevin. We do a sound check the first day of the tour, and then now with the gear that everybody has, the outboard gear and the front house guys, it's all computerized, and they've got it so dialed in you don't have to do sound checks. So it's a different world. So yeah, but Elton hates sound checks, so we'd never do them. But yeah, he was pretty far removed from rehearsals.
I would think, I mean, once you're that established and at that point in your career, that's probably not something you really would look forward to doing.
Well, if I could afford a surrogate Matt Bissonette, I'd send him to the rehearsals too. But I don't think I'm
Right.
making Elton money yet.
Right. Now I mentioned earlier that on the tour that you're on right now with Kevin, you played your first gig yesterday. Well, not your first gig as the Kevin Cronin
Right.
band, but your first one on this tour. There's a lot of controversy about the Reo Speedwagon name and that. But have you noticed in the few gigs that you have played under the Kevin Cronin band name, has there been like a difference, like reaction in the audience or any difference at all, or is it just exactly the same as it was when you were called Reo Speedwagon?
It's exactly the same. There's been a lot of drama, and I've kind of been removed from it. And you know, everyone's trying to figure it out and work it out. And it kind of, once again, like the Squirts songs, the amount of hatred going on about which camp you're in and all that stuff. You just have to kind of sit back and go, okay, that's the way it is. But it's exactly the same band that we did last year, for all summer with Train and, with Rick Springfield, and we've been out. So it's the same band. So we've done, this is our second gig. We played last night in Greenville, South Carolina. seemed just like a regular gig. And, it's a lesson about branding and about a name and how some people go, you know, there's so many bands that have been around that don't even have very many of the original members, but one guy or whatever is kind of the way it is because, that music back then was so great that everybody wants to hold on to it for as long. You got Foreigner and Journey and Styx and us and all these bands. It's like nobody wants to let go of it. So I I'm just happy that it's still going and it doesn't seem any different to me from the two shows we did, but it's still early.
Do you think the band will continue on after this tour? Because there's been some rumors that this might be the last year of the band entirely.
Yeah, I don't really know. I have no idea. We talk about it all the time in the back of the bus, and that's purely up to Kevin, So we're ready to go for as long as it can go. But I mean, it's a unique situation. So we just have to see how that plays out. I hope it keeps going.
It is unique, and it's also like, with a lot of the drama going on, it's almost like backhanded compliment to you because Kevin enjoys playing with you so much that he doesn't want to change the band. So I mean, some
I don't,
people have you in the like crosshairs of the target,
yeah,
as
I don't know how to feel about it. It's something that I was talking to the guys yesterday, and just kind of like you kind of feel like a mistress, sort of, like you got in the middle of it. But there's just so many levels of this thing that I don't even know about. That it's just music. It's just, music for 50 years. There's a lot of things that happen, and I don't really know the half of it. So I try and force myself. The less I know, the better. And I just hope that everybody works out stuff and that things can continue. And I'm praying that everybody stays healthy and lives good lives.
all right, Matt. Well, I appreciate your time. The last thing I want to ask you is, have you ever thought about writing a book about your music career?
Wow. That's a funny question. When I was just thinking when I woke up today, I was just thinking about how inadequate my life is. And some people would say, it's like my wife. When I come home from a tour and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm pretty cool. And I get home and my wife will just go, all right, you're home now. Let's take the dog out. Let's take the garbage out. And, I'm so used to being it. I talk to this about this all the time with Kim Bullard, the keyboard player with Elton. We, we played a one-off last week with Elton at Petco Park in San Diego, the baseball stadium. It's like 55,000 people were there, and we haven't done a gig like in 4 months. And it was like a benefit for 50,000 people. So you show up and you haven't seen each other for like a couple months, and you do this show, and it's just like you're back in on the road. The lights are going, and people are screaming. You walk off. They do the Beatle exit where they get in the vans and they rush you to the airport, and then you get home and you just go, "Did that just happen? Did that was like a puff me up moment?" And then you're right back down. And I mean, the whole thing with music is kind of a glass house that if you're not solid in who you are and you have a relationship with God or with your friends that keep you grounded, I can see how if you don't have that, you could go one way or the other. But as far as writing a book, I don't know who would give a rat's butt about anything like that. I mean, I think it's an interesting life being a musician to be able to play with these people, and I never take it for granted. All the people in my life that I've met, my heroes, musical heroes, and actually becoming their friends. It's my brother and I always talk about how we pinch ourselves. Greg's on a plane with Ringo, hanging out at his house, and I'll go to Ringo's and play bass. And the other day I did a session a couple months ago with Ringo at his house, and there's Barbie walking around the backyard by the pool, and then Ringo's watching me play bass for like an hour, and then he just started like looking at me like, now's a good time if you want to ask me Beatle questions. So I'm like, hey, so what was it like when you were in the room? And I'm looking at him. You know how sometimes when you're talking to somebody and you like go someplace else, you going, am I really here right now? Is this conversation happening? And I'm looking at Ringo going, I can't believe I'm asking him about how he played drums on this song or whatever, that he's actually talking to me. And I keep thinking this isn't real. And in that regard, I think that would be an interesting book, you know. But as far as actually writing a book, I just can't see anybody ever going, oh, yeah, that would be interesting and worth the money to print it on, you know. I mean, I feel like I've had an amazingly blessed life and with family, friends, and all these experiences every day. I mean, like today, it's super hot here. So Dave Amato and I are going to go see Mission Impossible. And then we're going to drive to Hollywood, Florida tonight. And when I write a journal every day. And when I look at it, I just go, man, that's a lot of stuff crammed into a year. And every year I read it and go, that's interesting. I just don't know how interesting that would be to the normal, you know, person that doesn't care, you know, but that would be
I
interesting.
think you've played with enough artists where I think you would get a lot of interest, to be quite honest. I mean, just the stories you've told me so far today have really been fascinating. So, I mean, and you have a journal, you write a journal, so you're already halfway there.
I'm halfway there. I remember what happens. I just can't remember what happened yesterday in my brain.
All right. Well, keep writing it down because I think you should do this one of these days.
Yeah, that's for sure. Good idea. Well, thanks for that thought.
You're welcome. All right, Matt. Well, thank you. Best of luck to you. Hopefully, I'll see you when you play. You're not playing in Buffalo, New York, but you're playing close enough where I could get there, and that's Syracuse, New York.
Okay,
So,
cool. If you come out, let
hopefully,
me know and we'll hook you up.
all right. Well, sounds great.
Don't throw a nunchuck at me.
I promise I'll if anyone does, I'll like dive in front of it for you, okay? I mean, I'll make that promise
I
right
love
now.
you, man. Thanks,
Yes.
buddy. Well, thanks for hanging out and stay warm up there.
Yeah, absolutely. And good luck on the rest of the tour. And like I said, hopefully we'll see you sometime in July. All
All
right,
right.
Matt. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye. You too.